Sports Talk Chicago. Here with Jon Zaghloul, and we're back and ready for today's special guest. He's the host of Danny Mac's Friday Tailgate on WJLB, host of the Danny Mac podcast, and a sports radio legend. Please welcome Dan McNeil to the program. Dan, it's great to have you on. How are you?
John, I'm outstanding. Thank you, and it's good to be with you. Legend usually applies to those who no longer have work. So I guess I fit because I'm kind of part-time working.
Great to have you on here with me. And, you know, again, we talked about this last time. A legend's a good thing, Dan. You are a legend in Chicago sports radio. So I would take that as a compliment more than a part-time worker.
Okay. Consider it taken that way then.
What do you make of the Bears-Lions game? First off, we'll start there.
I thought they really let one get away yesterday. It's unfortunate. They couldn't do what they do best when they needed to the most, and that is run the football. They have a 24-10 lead as the fourth quarter is getting started, and they let it get away from them. You know, they get the redemption touchdown from Fields right after the pick six by Jeff Okudah. He breaks off that long touchdown run. And then Cairo Santos misses the point after. It was almost surreal. And that was a lousy football team they lost to at Soldier Field. That's not a good Detroit football team. It's tough to see them not close. And it's tough to see, to me, what's most difficult pill to swallow is that guys who are going to be a part of this team when they get good again could not be relied upon yesterday. And I'm talking specifically about Jalen Johnson, the corner. He sure doesn't look healthy. 2 hands to the face penalties in the fourth period. One of them questionable, but you can't do it. You can't put yourself in that position. And there are a few other guys who I thought were more, worthy of being relied on. That was a tough go yesterday.
You know, there are a lot of people trying to play revisionist history, saying, well, it's okay, the Bears are tanking, or they're going to be helping out. Justin Fields did well. I think my take is the following, which is even though they're trying to tank, some of these guys are going to be with this team next year. You have to try and instill a culture of winning. And yesterday they blew the game after leading by 14 points. I think that's unacceptable.
Yeah, it is. And they let a team that is not very good play very comfortable offensively. They didn't knock down Jared Goff. His uniform was quite clean. I think the great Jack Sanborn had a couple of sacks yesterday, but that's just it. And that's 2 straight weeks now without forcing a turnover. You don't win in the NFL if you don't take the ball away. They haven't had a turnover since Eddie Jackson picked Dak Prescott in their most farthest away celebrated loss. See, everybody celebrates these losses, and I'm glad that you're not celebrating this one to Detroit because it's not one that's worthy of a celebration.
How do you evaluate Justin Fields' performance overall?
I thought he played well. I think each week he is more decisive as a runner. He's using that as a weapon as effectively as anybody in the league is today, and that includes Lamar Jackson. It's only a couple of weeks of it, but it's been very, very good, and it's fun to watch, and it's good to see the Bears get in short yardage. They did very well on third down Sunday against the Lions because they were in third and manageable most of the day. I thought Fields played exceptionally well. The pick six was dreadful, but you're going to have those moments. I just wish he would have had a little bit more help along the way. And I wonder where the hell Chase Claypool was Sunday. That was curious to me. He only played 19 snaps.
Why do you think that is? I mean, there have been thoughts that he hasn't learned the offense enough, or that Matt Eberflus is saving him, but you'd think he'd play a little bit more now after 2 weeks on the team.
Certainly a guy who's that large of a target and can run like he would, whether he's familiar with the playbook or not. He can run a 9 route and take a couple of members of the secondary with him if he so desires. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't have good practice habits. There's got to be more to this story, and I'm hoping throughout the course of this week As reporters navigate their way through this first 10 games of the season, they get some answers out of the Bears coaching staff as to why Claypool wasn't more a part of the attack yesterday, because I think we've all seen enough of Dante Pettis, and Byron Pringle can get back in his 700 horsepower car and do donuts in a school parking lot anytime he wants to, because he hasn't done anything for this team either.
How much help does Justin Fields need at least for next year? What should the Bears be targeting for him?
They need a wide receiver. They without question need a number one wide receiver. I don't know if Claypool is going to fit that bill, and I certainly don't have that type of regard for Darnell Mooney. He would be nice to have as your third receiver. So they've got to get a wide receiver, and they're going to have to get more help on the offensive line, which I think has played fairly well this year. I was concerned about that, as a lot of people were going into this season. I didn't think the Bears had much up there, but the right tackle, Borum, when he's been healthy, he's done a nice job. And for being a rookie, Braxton Jones has done just fine. He's had some bad days, but you're going to as a left tackle, rookie or not. So that's the first priority, wide receiver. Number two, find me another offensive lineman.
What do you think about Fields over these past 4 weeks in general? Are you sold on his ability to be a franchise guy now for the Bears?
I'm not. I don't think he has crossed that threshold as a passer. I think what he does makes him so unique. Defenses have to really, really dial in on stopping him, or at least trying to keep him from going crazy, like rushing for 150 plus yards, which he's done 2 weeks consecutively now. But no, I've not seen him take those steps consistently enough. They've got to let him throw more than 20 times a game. It's tough to develop into that elite class if you're not getting a chance to post elite numbers. And I completely disagreed with Mark Sanchez said on the broadcast yesterday when the Bears were very conservative on their first series. And he said, sometimes you just got to keep your quarterback. You got to protect him from yourself. And they called an inside run on 3rd and 15 from the 19. Throw the ball. I mean, it's your first series of the game. You're at home. Your offense has confidence. You're not going to keep your quarterback from hurting himself. What kind of philosophy is that, playing scared? I didn't agree with that at all. And I hope the Bears take the training wheels off him very soon.
How have you felt about Fields' run-first mentality? Obviously, it helps out offensively. The Bears are putting up numbers, but is this going to be sustainable for him?
No, probably is not. And that's another thing that's alarming. And people don't like to hear this, but it's the reality of it based on history. Quarterbacks who run first tend to get hurt. Russell Wilson is nowhere near the player he used to be when he was a young, spry, elusive quarterback. And if you look at the history of quarterbacks who were successful, primarily predicated on what they did with their legs, I'm talking about the guys like Michael Vick or Dante Culpepper of the Vikings in the 90s. These are guys whose careers were much more impressive when they were younger players. So I don't know how long the window is for a guy like Justin Fields. Sooner or later, that nasty sport will catch up with your body. And he is a big, strong guy, but he's capable of being hurt just like any of the rest of them. So I don't think it's something you can win with for 8 or 10 years. No.
How good of a passer is Fields? Honest opinion.
What kind of a passer?
How good of a passer do you think he is?
He's made marked progress. And what I like about Justin too is he's done as much as any Bears quarterback I've seen. He's thrown the ball in spots where his guy is the only guy who can get it. And sometimes that means the guy's got to make a remarkable catch, and he doesn't always get those. But Mooney has had a few signature catches this season. He had one last week. He had one against the Vikings early in the season. some tremendous catches where your body is twisted and contorted and you can just barely get your fingers on the hoochie. And he's done a nice job of throwing those type of balls. His production should be better than what it is. And if you want to go back to last week's loss to the Dolphins, the ball he threw to Equanimeous St. Brown could not have been more perfect. And that should have given the Bears at least a chance to tie the game and take the Dolphins into overtime, but Equanimeous St. Brown dropped the ball.
Let me ask you this. If the Bears actually give Fields good wide receiving, what do you think his ceiling would be?
I think he could be – I think he could get to that top tier, although so few do. I would be reluctant to bet on it. I think – there's a good chance that he could be, his talents could be one of the most unique ever to play the position, because as explosive as he is as a runner, I mean, he exceeds what Jackson in some ways has been able to do. Lamar Jackson is a video game in his own right, but in terms of just straightforward blazing speed, I think Fields is a different animal. And you're not going to see him likely be one of those guys who's going to be a 300-yard passer very often. And Jackson has now entered that territory. He's had several games this year already where he has eclipsed 300 yards or thrown for 3 touchdowns, which Fields did last week against the Dolphins. I think he has a chance to enter that territory, but a completely different animal. He's never going to post the type of numbers, I don't think, that your more elite quarterbacks do as a passer, but the combination of his explosive running talents and accuracy and deep ball make him a very special player potentially.
Dan McNeil here on Sports Talk Chicago. Dan, what's your impression of the Bears' new regime at this point?
I like most of what I've seen so far. It's discouraging, I think, they're not taking the ball away. That was the biggest sales point Matt Eberflus had coming into this season with Indianapolis last year. The Colts led the NFL in takeaways, and that's what he preaches. Gang tackling, everybody get to the football. Well, they've only done that once in the last 3 games, and Jalen Johnson still has only 1 career interception. And this is a guy who spent time chirping in the offseason about being among the best at his position. And he's right in the stats don't always, bear that out for cornerbacks, because if you're really good, they avoid you. But come on, you're 2.5 years into this thing and you've got 1 pick. I like a lot of what I've seen from the coaches. I think Getsy in particular, Luke Getsy, the OC, has made some remarkable improvement. I thought they used their little mini bye after the Commanders Thursday night game very, very well, and showed up strong against the Patriots on that Monday night game a few weeks ago. So I'm giving them high marks, but it's very, very early, and I will not grade Ryan Poles' first draft until they've been in the league for a couple of years.
I was just going to ask you about Ryan Poles. How do you think he's done in general? Maybe not draft-wise, but just in general, building this team and trying to navigate a rebuild.
I love that he is accruing draft capital. You don't always hit on draft picks, which is why I don't mind having a ton of them on draft week, because there are going to be some mistakes. Some of the free agent moves he did in the offseason are very curious to me. They've got nothing out of Riley Reif, and you could have seen that coming. Cincinnati didn't want him back, and they were among the worst pass protecting teams in the league last year. The defensive lineman he tried to another Bengal last year couldn't pass his physical. So, and Equanimeous St. Brown, Byron Pringle, N'Keal Harry is another one. These are just guys. These are not guys who are going to make a difference. But I do like the fact that they have shown the door to some people who weren't seemingly participating at a very high level. Amir Smith-Marset, for example, a couple of weeks after making mistakes, the former Vikings cast-off was kicked to the curb by the Bears. And I think it was smart to dump Roquan Smith if you're convinced And I think Poles was that situation last summer was so acrimonious, they weren't going to get him a second contract. He wanted to leave. You may as well dump him and try to get draft picks, and that's what they did. So I applaud it.
What did you think of that whole Roquan Smith situation? Not having an agent, having all these rumors come out. He was very vocal and even held out a little bit. Now the Bears traded him.
I think Roquan made a terrible mistake not hiring representation during the offseason. I don't know why he chose to do that, and that's how acrimony begins, is when players have to sit across from the general manager themselves and listen to why they don't deserve this or that. But it's all very true. If you want to be a $20 million a year linebacker, damn, you got to take the football away. And Shaquille Leonard, the artist formerly known as Darius Leonard, coming into this season had 17 forced fumbles in his career. Same number of years as Roquan Smith. Smith had 1. Leonard had more interceptions, decidedly more interceptions. He makes more explosive plays. That's what you have to do to be a $20 million a year linebacker. And Smith may get it from somebody this year, but it wouldn't be my team if I were in Ryan Poles' position. I don't think he's that explosive of a player. He's a tackling machine, but you don't pay guys like that $20 million.
So without Smith, the Bears' salary cap is supposed to be over $140 million this offseason. How do you think they allocate that money?
They better get some better players offensively first. They also have a terrible deficiency at pass rusher. They have got to draft somebody who can get after the quarterback and or get them through free agency. And I've not looked across the league yet at the list of upcoming free agents. I'm very much aware that it is a good quarterback draft, which probably doesn't appeal to the Bears this upcoming season, but who knows? They have got to get some people who can get after the quarterback. They only had a couple of sacks yesterday. They have spent several weeks without knocking the quarterback down, and you can't win that way. You've got to get pressure on the quarterback, and you have to protect your own quarterback. And they've done a little bit better job of that of late.
How do you plan on evaluating the rest of this season for the Bears right now at 3-7? You're the bottom of the division after that Lions loss. Well, how do you see them moving forward here?
I think what would encourage me would be win takeaway battles. And I'm not in love with the scoreboard necessarily in a rebuild year. Now, that said, the loss to the Lions, unacceptable. You got to start taking the ball away, and you have got to stop making so many mental mistakes. The Bears had a ton of penalties Sunday against Detroit. I think four of their 9 penalties were in the fourth quarter. Might have even been 5. And you can't do that. You've got to play with more composure. So I want to see these guys, especially those who are going to be core players, your Jalen Johnsons of the world, your rookie tackle, Braxton Jones. I want to see him make fewer mistakes and get called for fewer penalties. So less penalties, more takeaways. That's what I'm looking for the second half of this season. And if they do those things as well as they're running the football, they should win a few games, or at least be in every game.
Dan McNeil, still here on Sports Talk Chicago. Dan, a few more questions before we finish up. First off, the podcast. How's it been going?
Outstanding. I have no trouble mustering up a few words every now and again when it comes to the greatest game ever invented. I love doing football, and I love that Bet Rivers gives me the freedom to do that twice a week. My show usually drops on Monday mornings, right around 10 or 11 o'clock, and then the same thing on Thursdays. I just do 30 to 45 minutes, just flapping gums by myself, kind of a stream of consciousness thing. And I do my terrestrial show on Fridays, the Tailgate on WJOB in Hammond with Oak Park Vandy. I'm still doing that each and every week. So I'm getting enough snaps in, John, if you will.
What makes the podcast more attractive or better or worse compared to your time in radio for so many years?
The great thing about it is it's uninterrupted by commercials, and it's uninterrupted by a co-host who wants to white knuckle grip. And I've had great partners, but every now and again, especially when the conversation is football, it's like I think I can handle this one all by my lonesome. And there's no clock on it. It's as long as I want it to be on whatever topic. I typically do the Bears for at least half of my 40-ish minutes, and then blitz around the league for the biggest stories of any given week. On a Monday, it'll be yesterday's games. On a Thursday, it'll be looking ahead to the games that I think will be the most interesting. And we certainly have had week after week of interesting football. And yesterday's just another case in point. Who thinks the Vikings win a second straight road game against the Bills, who should have been ready for revenge after losing one to the Jets at home the previous week?
How did you react to that last sequence? I mean, Josh Allen fumbling the football in the end zone. I certainly didn't expect that.
It was bizarre. And man, whatever it would take to get Justin Jefferson off of the Vikings roster, there's something Ryan Poles might want to look into. Those 3 catches he made, I think in succession, 3 consecutive catches, completions from Allen that went, or from Cousins that went to Jefferson, just out of his mind. Good, just fully extended, one hand on the ball. It's hard to, it's crazy to think he made 3 catches like that in the same game in succession. But that was a great game yesterday. I still don't buy the Vikings. I'm not sure why. I don't know what much more they need to do to prove to me they're legit. They just beat the team most people think is the favorite to win the AFC, which has better teams in it, at least at the top end, than does the NFC. But I'm still not in on the Vikings.
I feel the same way. I mean, I think we have to see Kirk Cousins actually win a freaking playoff game before we could talk about the Vikings being a Super Bowl contender, right?
Yeah, maybe there's something about Cousins that I can't quite get my head around. I think that's probably a big part of it. And for the longest time yesterday, they had trouble getting Dalvin Cook going against that Bills defense too. And I think if you're going to have to win because of Cousins, that's going to be your undoing. If the running game goes, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they can beat Philadelphia. But I think that's what it would require for them. They'd have to play close to a perfect game for them to beat the Eagles, who go for their 9th win with no losses tonight.
You think they're going to do it?
Will win tonight?
Yeah,
I think they'll beat the Commanders. I don't think they're going to run the table, though. Boy, it'd be nice to see those 72 Miami Dolphins sweating again, with the idea of somebody potentially going perfect for the year. But the Eagles have both dates left with the Giants, and they have to play the Cowboys again. So I don't see them going unbeaten.
And Dan, before we finish up today, last question for you. What's the best moment you had as a part of the Heavy Fuel crew? Going way back for you.
Oh, the best part of my show with Terry Boers. Man, I think if there's one road trip that stands out above maybe all others I ever made with radio shows over the years is when we were in Seattle in the spring of '96, when the Bulls were going for their first in the second three-peat. They had Seattle in '96 and then Salt Lake City with the Jazz '97 and '98. I think the trip to Seattle was about as much fun as I ever had doing radio. We were supposed to come home after the 5th game in the series, but the Bulls lost that game, which was a surprise. So I called the program director at halftime and I said, hey, why would we be coming home when there's another game here Friday night? We should be here for that game Friday night. You say we're not positive enough about the Bulls. How's this? We're not leaving until that trophy is safely tucked in Jerry Krause's suitcase. And he liked the idea of it. And it further strengthened my friendship with Dan Patrick, who's been a buddy and a mentor over the years, and just have nothing but great memories of being on the road with the Bulls. And it wasn't necessarily because of the basketball, but it was because of the people I met and some of the experiences I gained. It was a lot of fun covering those Bulls with Terry Bors. Terry's a big basketball guy, and we had a blast.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure to get your football takes, and looking forward to staying in touch and having you on again soon. Best wishes with Bet Rivers as well at WJOB.
Thank you, John. Always fun to be with you. Have a good week. Go Bears, right? Go Bears.